Good morning and welcome to The Brief. I'm Bear with preparedness.com. Coffee is on. Let's get to it. Bear Independent Brief, 10 January 22. Can you believe it? Energy and food costs are still impacting the supply chain down the line. Particularly think of manufacturers and restaurants here. And high fertilizer costs could mean higher food prices will continue for a while to come. Part of this has to do, as previously mentioned, the urea shortage here in the United States, exacerbated by the fact that the number one and number two global producers of urea are China and Russia. And urea is used in factory farming to maintain exorbitantly high crop yields. And for some reason, here in the United States of America, we don't produce piss, because that's what urea is, or we don't produce enough of it. So, be a good patriot and pee today. The pressure for consumers is especially intense, with housing prices skyrocketing to the stratosphere. Rents are still rising, and a huge amount of people are being priced out of the house buying market too. That's because there's a lot of speculation in real estate currently, because everything else is so flippy-floppy. So volatile, I believe, is the actual word, that people are investing in land and in real estate because it may lose value. It oftentimes does lose enormous amounts of value, but it never goes to zero. Unlike certain other investments out there, and even things that are insured by the FDIC. Even if inflation starts falling, which is questionable, incomes have still not kept up. It's a net loss for most folks. Still, this isn't just about groceries costing more. With enough strain, companies start to fail, and when companies fail, people lose jobs. Expect that strain to increase. It looks like more bumps are coming down the road for the supply chain. Recently, warnings have emerged from Hong Kong's key airline, Cathay Pacific, about supply chain effects reverberating through the first quarter of 2022. New mandates are disrupting Hong Kong International Airport, which is a leading cargo hub. The airline has been canceling an undisclosed number of flights due to the government's rules, stating that restrictions, quote, constrain our ability to operate flights as planned. Now, this is a big deal because air freight has seen a huge reemergence of popularity, given that cargo ships are going through such enormous supply chain strain as well currently. So just one more indicator, one more thing to keep track of. The fragile, broken system is flailing about trying to fix itself. And in many ways, these are good. Innovation is good, because when scary stuff like this happens, we look to the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the inventors to help us pivot our way out of a bad system into a good one. But you can see that even as that shift occurs, where we go from shipping, cargo ships rather, to air freight, what happens? The government gets involved, stating that the restrictions, quote, constrain our ability to operate flights as planned. What did Reagan say? I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The scariest words in the English language, also apparently in the Chinese language. Pretty scary. Hong Kong's restrictions include strict, lengthy quarantines for crew members and pilots that visit certain areas, as well as the temporary grounding of any airline that fails to comply with, quote, containment measures, end quote, or reaches Hong Kong carrying passengers that test positive. China is just the canary in the coal mine. A Chicago-based company, ConAgra Brands Incorporated. Have you heard of ConAgra? I bet you have. You've probably heard of some of their products. While you think about what that might be, I'm going to think about taking a glove and fetching this little metal pot out of the fire so that I can put some of that hot water in a cup and make coffee with it. Because a life should be worth living, and a life without coffee is questionable at best. Ah, gorgeous. Beautimous. Fabulous, tremendous, believe it, everybody tells me. The best coffee, believe it. ConAgra Brands has reported an increase in employee positive case numbers, which is leading to even sparser staffing. If this is indicative of how other companies in the U.S. will react, then it is highly likely that Americans will see something similar to 2020 repeat as test numbers soar. Now, testing is way up with the Omicron variant, even though the symptoms are not terrible. I mean, it's basically a cult. But there's been so much increased testing that's driving all these massive new numbers of cases because there's been so much massive testing. And let's not even talk about, false positives. That's, I'm sure, a contributor. Let's say they're all 100% real, man. These are all 100% legit cases. Cool. Whole bunch of people got the sniffles. It's not like, your pancreas melts and then you poop it out your back end and you die. Like, it's not that. It's not horrendous. It's not horrendous. The labor shortage is merely adding on to the already existing woes of rising costs of raw material and foodstuffs from manufacturers. Another talking point. After a year-long shortage of an estimated 80,000 truckers, America's transportation system may soon be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Or will it? A law was recently passed that could improve the number of truck drivers on the roads, allowing apprenticeships for drivers as young as 18. This was specifically created to resolve the supply chain issues across the nation, but it's obviously creating concerns about safety. Younger drivers are known to be some of the least safe drivers on the road, and they certainly carry that reputation. According to CDC statistics, quote, the risk of motor vehicle crashes is higher among teens aged 16 to 19 than any other group. In fact, per mile driven, teen drivers in this age group are nearly 3 times as likely as drivers aged 20 or older to be in a fatal crash. With potentially tens of thousands of 18 and 19-year-old drivers operating semi-trucks, massive machines on roads and highways throughout the nations, Americans may feel ambivalent about this particular solution to the crisis. Now, it does bring up that you should 100% have a good first aid kit in your vehicle, especially if you have teenagers, and you should know how to use that stuff. I like Refuge Medical. Now, I like Refuge Medical because I own Refuge Medical. And the reason Refuge Medical exists is because I couldn't find anybody else's first aid kit that was actually worth using. And so Refuge Medical is handmade, made in America, guaranteed forever, has saved 29 lives in the last 2 years. 29 lives in the last 2 years that we know of. We're on 4 continents with all branches of the U.S. Armed Forces, law enforcement, EMS, fire everywhere. And civilians like you have these things in their vehicles all over North America and Europe, believe it or not. So I would strongly encourage you to go to refugemedical.com and pick out a kit. I would recommend the Bear Fact 3.0. Speaking of bears, here comes that dog. Whoa, coffee. Chill, buddy. I would recommend the Bear Fact 3.0. It's a phenomenal kit for your vehicle. It saves lots of lives. It has everything you need and nothing you don't from the best manufacturers in the industry: North American Rescue, Tackman Solutions, H&H, Medline, the best stuff. Tremendous, believe it. You can use promo code Bear Nation for free shipping at refugemedical.com. Bear Nation, free shipping on all the stuff. And go to refugetraining.com if you'd like to know how to use these kits as well. It's one thing to have it, it's another thing to know how to use it. So, yeah, statistically, we all carry a gun on our hip, and we know that, it's, if I need it, it's the only way I'm going to be able to solve this problem. Yep. Statistically, you got a 0.0% chance of using that gun. Statistically, the most dangerous thing that you do is drive. And preventable causes of death, bleeding is the #1 preventable cause of death in the 90th percentile. So you should probably have a kit from Refuge Medical and know how to use a tourniquet and how to wound pack, because the most dangerous thing you do is drive. And if you get into a bad wreck, 9 out of 10 things that are going to kill you in that wreck is uncontrolled bleeding. And we make the kits to treat that, and we teach the classes to allow you to use the kits to treat that. So I'm going to have a sip of this Kofefe, and we'll do the second portion of the brief. Stand by. The city of Xi'an, or Xi'an in China, or if you read it as it's written, XY''AN, Xi'an, I believe is how it's pronounced. China is starting to see heavy lockdowns during an outbreak of the Omicron. What's in Xi'an? Look, battle dog back there. You see him right there? There he goes. What's in Xi'an? Only 2 of the largest chip makers in the world, Samsung and Micron. No biggie. The only specifics drawn out from the manufacturers so far is that DRAM or DRAM memory chips, digital random accessory memory, random access memory. Yeah, I believe that's what that stands for. Which is used in computers. Could be, oh, it's just computers, right? Which is in everything now. The Internet of Things, your car has 11 computers in it. Yeah. Which is used in computers. Could be impacted because of the sparse workforce. If things get stricter, it will get worse for these chip makers, and that's certainly possible considering how government has responded so far. Xi'an locked down all public transportation and venues, including schools, for 13 million people after just 1,000 cases were reported. Remember, semiconductors are keys to everything modern, not just laptops and cell phones, but fighter jets and vehicles and critical infrastructure systems. Reuters pointed out that the chips, quote, power almost all advanced civilian and military technology, end quote. So what does this mean? The outcome of semiconductor allocation today could determine the future of military and economic strength tomorrow. In other words, get your chips, boys, because you might not be able to get them tomorrow, and those high-speed weapons you want to build can't make it without the chips. That infrastructure you wanted to build, best of luck, don't got the chips. And so, vital, critical component of our modern way of existence, these little silicon chips produced in Xi'an, China. It's locking down 13 million people because 1,000 people got the sniffles. If you don't think that there's an element of warfare to this, you out your damn mind. The Great Reset. I'm going to call it like the mediocre reset. It's been a lot less flash and bang than I thought it was going to be. But frankly, the more time I spend out here, the less I care. It's almost as if people on the internet have been telling you to come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues for years upon years upon years. And that's not just a physical thing, it's a mental, emotional, spiritual thing as well. But I've digressed. I've gotten away from the brief. Nobody cares about your spirituality, Barry. Shut up. Nobody cares about your land. Don't you understand? I'm just po white trash. I can't do no better. You're absolutely right. You're right. If you believe that, you're absolutely correct. You can't do no better. You just suffer and die right where you're at, sweetheart. In the meanwhile, I'll continue to tickle your ears with the brief. The shortage of semiconductors, of course, is pre-existing, and it's a problem that is not getting any better. President Biden signed an executive order to address the chip shortage back in February of last year. Way back in 2021. Remember the good old days of 2021? Last September, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's opening remarks. I feel like I went to school with Gina Raimondo. Gina? No, it was Cara Raimondo. And I dated a Gina. Got them confused. Cara, if you're out there, sup, girl? Gina Raimondo's opening remarks at a virtual roundtable were, quote, "When we last convened the industry on the chip shortage in May, I heard from many of you that things were going to improve. 4 months later, the situation seems to be getting worse." Well, Gina, sounds like somebody lied to you. It happens. What other complications could be on the horizon? Potential war in the South China Sea could be a major flashpoint for worsening this crucial issue. Asia is the source for 90% of all semiconductors, with Taiwan making up 63%. Let's pause there just a moment. It helps explain why China's so gung-ho on the forced reunification of Taiwan. Now, China has had a one China policy for decades, meaning that there is one China, and that one China includes Taiwan. And Taiwan has, to a lesser or greater extent, agreed with China about that, to the point where they investigated one China, two governments, one China, two systems, two different systems of governance and economic trade. They've tried all these different things, and Taiwan has agreed because China has basically said, if you don't agree, we will schwack your pee-pee so hard you no have no pee-pee no more, right? Like, we will whip your ass if you can't play along. So let's learn to play along. And so Taiwan has more or less tried to play along. They're over that. This one China policy is not working for Taiwan any longer. And the question really is, what does China lose by pursuing this one China policy? A lot like analysts have said that with the Russia-Ukraine-NATO situation, that perhaps Russia doesn't have the chutzpah to follow through on all of their threats to repatriate Crimea in the Ukraine, the Luhansk and Donbass regions, right? Donetsk regions, rather, collectively known as the Donbass. But they're sure going to saber rattle, and they're going to get as many concessions from NATO as they can. What do they lose? Nothing. I think China's kind of in the same spot. What do they lose by saying we're taking Taiwan? By 2025, we're taking Taiwan. People preemptively may say, you know what, you can just have it. How about instead of taking it by force, you can just have it? Okay, China says, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Fabulous. So fabulous, tremendous, believe it, right? That's what they say. That's so racist, Barrett. No, I can make fun of everybody, myself included. Did I not just make fun of poor white trash? Exhibit A. So China can walk right up to that line, talking about how they're going to force repatriate Taiwan. And at the last moment, say, JK, LOL, we don't want a war. And keep us tied up with military spending, defense spending, weapons development, allocation of resources, including personnel and equipment, all across the globe to combat this potential Chinese threat in Taiwan, which they could say at any point, kidding, just kidding. Do I think they're going to do that? No, I think they're going to get Taiwan. I think that they want Taiwan by any means necessary, much like Russia wants the Crimea, the Donbass region, because they have warm water ports in the Sea of Azov there, or year-round ports, rather, in the Sea of Azov there, as well as, drumroll please, food and water, things you might be thinking about. Russia's considering a war, a hot war, an open war, because there's been a proxy war there since 2012, I believe. So for a decade, they're considering a hot war for food and water. Maybe you should wake up and pay attention. China is considering a hot war with Taiwan for myriad reasons, but one of them here is discussed is Taiwan makes 63% of all the chips in the world. That could be, again, could inform why people are acting the way that they are acting, globally speaking. Same thing for the Estados Unidos, us. Why would we defend Taiwan? 63% of all the chips in the world. And if you want to continue to develop your economy while everybody else lags behind in the dark ages of zero semiconductors, might want to control 6/10 of the world's semiconductor production capability. Just throwing that out there. Forget the doomsday scenario of China suddenly taking over the whole island with all of its semiconductor factories. Just the existence of a military conflict in the region in general could cause more supply chain disruptions than most are prepared to cope with. Semiconductors are rapidly rising to the top of the list of concerns for governments around the world, and many people are thinking the same thing. It's time to bring manufacturing back home. I agree. Proudly made in America, our products. The problem is that global supply chains exist because of market pressures. It is simply not affordable to manufacture things in places with massively higher cost of living, thanks Joe Biden, because the cost will be astronomically higher. Will this mean unreasonably high prices or more subsidies from the government for the sake of national security? Interested in your comments down below. If you're on Patreon, you have the description. If you're not on Patreon, you don't. Patreon.com, search for Bear Independent, the economic engine of the Bear Nation. Thank you for supporting the show. It's $5 a month. We're unapologetic about it. It's the best $5 a month you can spend on the internet. Come at me, bro. Appreciate y'all. Have a fabulous day. I'm going to drink some more coffee. Shalom.